50,000 people. That's not a crowd. That's an invasion. And every single one of them booked a flight to Paris for one reason. A 20-year-old girl from Quezon City who hits a tennis ball like she's settling a personal argument with gravity. But here's the part that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. Most of those 50,000 people had never been to a professional tennis match in their lives. So what made them empty their savings accounts, call in favors, rebook flights, and descend on one of the most expensive cities on earth? That's the question. And the answer is going to completely change how you think about sports fandom. Let's go back to where this actually started, because Paris didn't happen overnight. It was built on a single afternoon in Miami that nobody saw coming. March 2025. A 19-year-old walks onto a court at the Miami Open. No seeding. No ranking worth mentioning. A wild card entry, which in tennis basically means you're expected to lose politely and go home. Her name was Alex. And she had other plans. She dismantled her first opponent. Fine, upsets happen. Then she took down Jelena Ostapenko. Okay, now people are paying attention. Then Madison Keys, the reigning Australian Open champion, walked off that court shaking her head. But the one that broke the internet, the one that made an entire nation stop breathing for 2 hours, was when Iga Swiatek, the world number 2, the most dominant clay court force on the planet, stood across the net from this teenager and lost. Not narrowly, but... And in the Philippines, something erupted that sports marketing executives still don't have a proper word for. It wasn't celebration. It was recognition. Like a country collectively exhaling after holding its breath for years, waiting for someone to show up on the world stage and say, "We belong here too." Journalist Diane Castillo, who has spent decades covering Filipino athletics, said Alex was already being treated like a multiple Grand Slam champion before she had won a single one. Think about that for a second. The country wasn't reacting to a trophy. They were reacting to a feeling. Sports writer TJ Minoto went even further and said something that tells you everything about the cultural weight of this moment. He said the Philippines had been hungry for the next Manny Pacquiao. And when Pacquiao was at his peak, life stopped. Life stopped again in Miami. But this time it was different, louder, younger, and it was carrying a tennis racket. Within days of that Miami run, Filipinos who had never personally attended a live tennis event started showing up. Not just in Miami. Everywhere Alex went. At Indian Wells, a Filipino-American named Andrew Rivera had driven 2 hours from Los Angeles just to watch her practice. Not a match. Practice. He had attended that tournament for 10 years. He said it was the most Filipinos he had ever seen there. 10 years. Never like this. The Filipino diaspora, over 10 million people spread across the globe, with nearly 2 million in California alone, had activated. Not gradually, not one by one, but all at once, like a signal had gone out and everyone received it at the same moment. Tournament directors started noticing. The BNP Paribas Open posted a single behind-the-scenes video featuring Alex on their YouTube channel. It pulled 94,000 views, more than anything else they had published that entire year. 94,000 for one video about one player from one tournament. ESPN started calling it the Alex Tour, and they meant it seriously. Fans were wrapping themselves in blankets at midnight in the California desert to watch a second-round match that went nearly 3 hours. Signs in Tagalog appeared in the front rows of every venue she entered. This was the foundation being poured. Nobody understood yet just how tall the building was going to get. Now fast forward to Paris. Roland Garros. A venue that has hosted over a century of tennis history. Bjorn Borg's dominance on clay. Rafa Nadal's almost mythological reign. Serena Williams chasing history under the French sun. Roland Garros had seen passionate crowds. It had seen national flags and regional pride and genuine emotion inside its gates. It had never seen anything like what was coming. Hotels within 3 kilometers of the complex sold out first. Then 5 kilometers. Then 8. Then 15. Accommodation platforms started showing no vacancy alerts across entire neighborhoods of Paris that had never once been connected to tennis tourism. Philippine Airlines and Cebu Pacific both reported demand patterns for European routes that their systems had genuinely never seen before. Parisian restaurant owners near the clay courts started receiving reservation requests written in Tagalog. Local convenience stores began restocking rice, not exactly a standard Parisian inventory decision, because someone had done the math on who was arriving and what they would want. 50,000 people. 50,000 individual decisions made across different time zones, different bank accounts, different life situations, all arriving at the same conclusion. She deserves to look up into the stands and see us there. And here is what makes that number genuinely staggering. At the time most of those bookings were made, Alex had not yet been confirmed beyond the first round. They weren't booking flights to watch her win. They were booking flights to watch her play. Do you understand the difference? Because that difference is everything. This wasn't transactional fandom. This was something older and more powerful than that. This was devotion. The kind that doesn't ask for guarantees. Roland Garros operations staff began holding meetings that had no template in their administrative history. Court assignments turned into a political crisis. Standard scheduling logic says you assign courts based on a player's ranking and recent results. Alex's actual drawing power had absolutely nothing to do with her ranking. At the Australian Open months earlier, she had lost in the first round. Her assigned court had been sized for someone ranked where she was. Instead, fans packed every available space. Others who couldn't get in stood outside the perimeter pressing their phones against the fencing just to hear the match audio. The WTA officially announced that Alex would receive a wild card into the main draw, citing extraordinary circumstances and acknowledging her significant contribution to the growth of women's tennis globally. The reaction landed exactly how you'd expect, split completely down the middle. Critics argued it was favoritism dressed up in diplomatic language, that other players had ground out their rankings point by point in the rain and the heat of qualifying tournaments, and that handing a wild card based on popularity rather than results undermines the integrity of the entire system. And honestly, that's a legitimate concern. The supporters countered that this was simply an acknowledgement of a reality the sport had been refusing to confront, that cultural impact, global fandom, and the ability to fill a stadium are real and measurable values that the current system has no mechanism to account for. And that's also legitimate. Both sides are right about something. But here's what neither side can argue against: the raw numbers. Dubai, 48% tickets surged the moment she entered the draw. Miami, the ticketing infrastructure crashed. Linz, without her, a 40% collapse in revenue that threatened the tournament's entire future. These aren't soft cultural arguments about representation or star power. These are hard financial realities that a tournament with 35 years of history was suddenly facing for the first time. And when you layer on top of those numbers what's happening in the stands, the Filipino fans flying in from multiple continents, the flags, the jerseys selling out within hours of going on sale, the noise level that transforms a routine Tuesday afternoon session into something that feels like a championship final. You begin to understand exactly what Nadal meant when he sat upright in bed that night and said he had never in his career seen a tournament's financial survival hinge entirely on one player who wasn't even in the draw. Because for Alex, this stopped being purely about tennis a while ago. The Filipino community that follows her isn't just watching a sporting event. They are watching someone who grew up in Manila, who came from a country where world-class tennis coaching isn't accessible on every corner and pathways to the professional tour are narrow and brutally competitive, and who still somehow found her way onto the biggest stages in the world. She means something that a scoreboard can't capture. For every overseas Filipino worker who left home chasing something better for their family, she is living proof that the sacrifice is worth it. Every banner in the stands has a story behind it. Every cheer carries weight that goes far beyond the current game score. That kind of connection isn't manufactured by a marketing team. It grows organically over years of watching someone fight for something real, and it travels with that person wherever they go. No other player in women's tennis right now is generating that at the same scale on multiple continents simultaneously. So as Alex enters the Linz Open on a wild card, seated 7th behind Alexandrova, Ostapenko, and the rest of the field, she walks in as the technical underdog and the undeniable main event at the same time. Clay is not her most comfortable surface. The game slows down, the rallies stretch longer, the bounce comes up higher, and the tactical patience required is different from the hard court style that first made her name. She knows this better than anyone. In a podcast conversation with Andy Roddick, she was completely straightforward about it. I could win the whole thing or go out in the first round. If I don't get it here, I'll get it somewhere else. That's not deflection. That's not false modesty either. That is the mentality of someone who knows exactly what she's building and understands that one result on one surface in 1 week doesn't define the arc. The clay season ahead, Stuttgart, Madrid, Rome, Roland Garros, is long and demanding and full of opponents who have spent years learning how to win on that surface. The challenges are real, but so is the support. When thousands of Filipino fans walk into that stadium in Austria, wearing her colors, making noise that transforms the entire building, the Linz Open, which was 48 hours away from becoming a financial cautionary tale, will feel something it hasn't felt in years. Purpose. Electricity. The real question this whole saga raises isn't whether the WTA made the right call in handing Alex the wild card. Reasonable people can disagree on that, and they will for a long time. The real question is what professional tennis does next. Because this is not a one-time anomaly. This is a preview of a much larger reckoning coming for a sport that built its systems in a different world and is now trying to navigate one where a 20-year-old from the Philippines can make corporate sponsors threaten to pull millions unless she's in the draw. The ranking system measures performance. It doesn't measure connection. It doesn't measure the number of people who will cross an ocean to watch you play. It doesn't measure what happens to a tournament's bottom line when your name disappears from the entry list. And until tennis finds a way to account for those things, officially, structurally, not just through emergency wild cards handed out at 3 in the morning after panicked phone calls, this exact crisis will happen again. Different tournament, different city, same name on everyone's lips. Alex changed something this year that cannot be unchanged. The sport felt it in Dubai, felt it in Miami, and felt it most painfully in Linz when she was absent, and the empty seats told the whole story without a single word. She didn't demand a wild card. The market demanded it for her. And that might be the most remarkable thing about this entire story. She didn't have to fight the system. The system looked at the numbers, looked at what was at stake, and moved out of her way.